Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to deep dive into something that might seem a little daunting at first, philosophy.
Yes, philosophy.
But trust me, this isn't going to be like one of those boring lectures or anything. No way. We're going to uncover why this whole field of philosophy, which a lot of people see as, kind of dusty and abstract, is actually surprisingly relevant to your life today.
Hmm. It's more relevant than most people think, that's for sure.
We've got some pretty fascinating source material here that touches on, well, just about everything. From the nature of reality to, get this, the ethics of artificial intelligence.
Yes, AI is a hot topic in philosophy right now.
One of the sources even asks how a self-driving car should be programmed to, wait for it, make life or death decisions.
No, that's a real ethical dilemma if I've ever heard one.
Talk about a real-world ethical dilemma. But okay, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start with the basics. Sound good?
The basics are always a good place to start. Indeed, grounding ourselves is essential. I mean, the term philosophy itself can sound a bit, well, intimidating to some.
Yeah, I'll admit, it's not the most inviting word.
Right. But at its core, philosophy is simply, well, a love of wisdom. It's the pursuit of those answers to life's biggest questions.
Okay, I can get behind that.
I will
A
know.
love wisdom. So it's not just about, memorizing theories by old guys with beards.
No, no, not at all. It's about using reason, logic, all that to explore those fundamental questions about, well, existence, knowledge, morality, the very nature of reality itself.
Wow, that is a lot to unpack.
And it's divided into different branches, each focusing on a specific aspect of our existence.
Gotcha. Our source material mentioned a few, like metaphysics. Now, that one sounds pretty intense.
It can be, yes. Metaphysics dives into the nature of reality itself. Think about it this way. What is time? Is time travel even possible? Those are, classic metaphysical questions.
Yeah, I can see how those would be metaphysical questions.
And in today's world, with virtual reality and simulations becoming increasingly sophisticated, well, understanding the nature of reality itself it's more relevant than ever.
Wow, yeah, I see what you mean about philosophy being relevant to our lives.
Yeah.
What other branches are there?
Well, you've got ethics, which grapples with questions of right and wrong. It's not just about knowing the rules, though. It's about figuring out how to live a moral life, especially when faced with difficult choices, situations where there are no easy answers.
That sounds like pretty much every day, honestly.
Ha 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 ha.
Right. So how does philosophy help us with those tough decisions then?
Well, it provides frameworks for thinking through those ethical dilemmas. For example, there's utilitarianism. Utilitarianism suggests we should always choose the actions that create the greatest good for the greatest number of people. But then on the other hand, you've got deontology. Deontology emphasizes moral duties and principles regardless of the consequences.
So different philosophical approaches offer, like different ways of looking at ethical problems. That's actually really helpful.
Right.
Our source material also mentioned logic. Is that about making sure our arguments actually, make sense?
Exactly. Logic is a key tool in philosophy, no doubt. It helps us structure our thoughts, identify fallacies, make sure our reasoning is sound. Think of it as uh, mental hygiene, but for your arguments.
Okay, that's a great way to put it. Mental hygiene for your arguments. I
Yeah.
like that. And what about aesthetics? I remember that word vaguely from
Oh,
art class.
yes, aesthetics. Aesthetics explores the nature of beauty in art. What makes something beautiful? What makes it meaningful? How does art impact our emotions and our understanding of the world? These are questions that, well, philosophers have been pondering for centuries. And you know what? They're still relevant today. They're shaping our understanding of art, design, even our own personal preferences.
It's all connected. So we've got all these different branches of philosophy, each one tackling a different piece of the puzzle of, well, existence. But where did it all begin?
Well, our journey takes us all the way back to ancient Greece, often considered the birthplace of Western philosophy. Thinkers like, well, you know the names, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They laid the groundwork for how we approach these big questions even today.
Okay, I have to admit, those names still intimidate me a little.
Oh.
Can you give us a quick rundown of these philosophical heavyweights?
Sure, of course. Socrates, for example, he was all about critical thinking. He believed that the unexamined life wasn't worth living, and he constantly challenged people to question their beliefs, even if it made them uncomfortable.
Interesting.
In fact, his relentless questioning, well, it got him into quite a bit of trouble.
Haha. So he was kind of a troublemaker, but for the sake of truth, I like him already. What about Plato?
Plato was a student of Socrates, and he took those ideas even further. His famous allegory of the cave. It's a mind-bending exploration of how our perceptions can be limited. Imagine being chained in a cave, okay? And you can only see shadows projected on the wall. You'd think those shadows were reality, wouldn't you?
It's like in the movie The Matrix,
Yeah.
when they discovered the world they thought was real is actually a simulation.
Exactly. Plato's allegory, it's a powerful metaphor that still resonates with us today.
Mm.
Makes us question the nature of reality, the limits of our own perception, all that.
Wow, that's deep. Okay, what about Aristotle?
Aristotle, oh, he was a true polymath. Expertise in everything from logic and science to politics and ethics. He's considered the father of logic.
Yeah.
And his work on categorizing and understanding the natural world, well, it laid the foundation for scientific inquiry as we know it.
It sounds like these ancient Greek philosophers really set the stage for Western thought as we know it.
They really did.
But our sources also mention Eastern philosophies, which seem to have a different focus.
Absolutely. Eastern traditions like Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism offer a more holistic and spiritual approach, you could say. They emphasize harmony, balance, self-awareness, and living in accordance with nature.
And those ideas are definitely having a resurgence today, right? With the growing popularity of mindfulness and well-being practices and all that.
Mhm.
It's fascinating to see how these ancient philosophies are still relevant to modern life. And I think I'm hearing our listeners asking this too, why should we care about all this? I mean, it's interesting stuff, no doubt, but how does philosophy actually help us, navigate the complexities of the 21st century?
That's the key question, isn't it? And that's where things get really fascinating. You see, philosophy, it's not just about ancient theories or abstract ideas. It's a toolkit for thinking critically, making ethical decisions, and finding meaning in a world that often feels, well, chaotic and overwhelming, wouldn't you say?
A toolkit, huh? I'm intrigued. Tell me more about how this philosophy toolkit actually works in practice.
Okay, let's go back to that self-driving car dilemma we mentioned earlier. As AI, artificial intelligence becomes more sophisticated, we need to think deeply about the ethical implications of its decisions. Can we program AI to make moral choices? And if so, whose morality do we program?
That's a heavy question.
It is, and it's just one example of how philosophy is becoming increasingly relevant in the age of technology. We need to consider the ethical implications of data privacy, social media algorithms, the potential for AI bias, all that.
So philosophy isn't just some dusty old subject. It's a vital tool for navigating the digital age.
Exactly, and it's not just about technology either. The environmental crisis, that's another area where philosophical inquiry can offer valuable insights.
Right, like how do we balance economic growth with protecting the planet, that kind of thing.
Precisely. And what are our responsibilities to future generations? Do future generations even have rights? How do we define sustainability in a world with finite resources? These are ethical and philosophical questions that demand our attention.
So philosophy can help us grapple with these big picture issues that affect all of humanity.
Absolutely. And it can also help us navigate the complexities of our own personal lives, too.
Okay, I'm ready to hear about how philosophy can be our personal life coach.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, think about it this way. Philosophy can help you develop critical thinking skills. And those are essential for making informed decisions in all aspects of life, really. We're bombarded with information from all directions these days, and it's easy to feel, overwhelmed, or even misled.
Especially in the age of fake news and social media echo chambers.
Exactly. Philosophy, it equips you with the tools to analyze information, identify biases, and form your own well-reasoned opinions.
It's like having a built-in BS detector.
You could say that. Philosophy can also help you with ethical decision-making, whether you're facing a career dilemma, a relationship challenge, or simply trying to live a life that aligns with your values. It provides those frameworks for making thoughtful, principled choices, even when faced with those difficult trade-offs.
So philosophy is about living a more intentional and examined life.
Precisely. It's about being conscious of your values, your beliefs, and the choices that you make. It's about striving to live a life that is meaningful and fulfilling to you.
I'm starting to see how philosophy can be this powerful tool for personal growth and navigating the complexities of modern life.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, some people might still be, skeptical.
Of course. Skepticism, after all, is a key part of philosophy. So what are some of the doubts you're hearing?
Well, some might say that philosophy is just, it's too abstract, too disconnected from real-world problems.
That's a common misconception, for sure. As we've discussed, there's a whole field of applied philosophy that directly engages with real-world issues, whether it's bioethics, environmental policy, business ethics, even the philosophy of technology. There are philosophers out there working to apply these concepts to concrete situations. They're helping us make sense of the ethical dilemmas we face in areas like healthcare, climate change, artificial intelligence.
So it's not all just ivory tower theorizing.
Not at all. Another critique I often hear is that philosophy is too focused on Western traditions, neglecting the rich and diverse philosophical thought that exists in other cultures.
That's a valid point. We need to broaden our understanding of philosophy beyond the Western canon.
Absolutely. And thankfully, the field of philosophy is becoming increasingly global in its perspective. There's a growing movement to decolonize philosophy, to incorporate and value the philosophical traditions of Eastern, African, indigenous, and other cultures that have often been, well, marginalized. It's about recognizing that philosophical inquiry is a universal human endeavor, not limited to any one culture or time period.
That's a really important point, and it makes the study of philosophy even more exciting, to me at least. Okay, last critique. Some might argue that in our increasingly technological world where data and algorithms seem to rule everything, that philosophy is simply irrelevant.
That's a tempting thought, but I'd argue that the opposite is true. The rapid advancements in technology, they make philosophical inquiry more crucial than ever, in my opinion. We need to think deeply about the ethical implications of artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and the increasing power of algorithms in our lives. We need to consider the impact of technology on our privacy, our relationships, even our sense of self.
So it's not a case of technology versus philosophy. They need each other.
Precisely. We need philosophers to help us understand the implications of these advancements and to ensure that we're using technology in a way that benefits humanity rather than harming it.
I think that's a great place to wrap up part one of our deep dive into philosophy.
Indeed. We've covered a lot of ground from the basic definition of philosophy to its historical roots and its relevance in the 21st century. But our journey, well, it's far from over.
In part two, we'll explore in more detail how philosophy can help us navigate those specific challenges in areas like technology, the environment, and our own personal lives.
We've laid the groundwork, I think, exploring the essence of philosophy, its historical evolution, all that.
Right.
But now I think it's time to, well, dive into those practical applications you mentioned, the real world stuff.
Yeah, let's get practical. So, tech. Our world is, well, it's increasingly shaped by algorithms and artificial intelligence, right? How can philosophy help us navigate this whole digital landscape?
It all comes down to ethics, really. As AI systems, those artificial intelligence systems, as they become more sophisticated, well, they're making decisions that have real-world consequences.
Right.
Think about facial recognition software that's used in law enforcement, or algorithms that determine who gets a loan or a job.
Yeah, these are big decisions that impact people's lives.
Exactly, and that's where philosophy comes in. We need to think critically about the values that are embedded in these systems. Are they fair? Are they biased? Are they transparent and accountable?
So, it's not just about the technology itself then. It's about the values that shape how that technology is developed and used.
Precisely. Take the self-driving car scenario we mentioned earlier, for example. If a car has to, swerve to avoid an obstacle and it can either hit a pedestrian or crash into a wall, how should it be programmed to decide?
Oh man, that's a terrifying thought.
It is.
And a perfect example of how AI kind of forces us to confront these ethical dilemmas that we might not have even considered before.
Exactly. And there's no easy answer. Different philosophical perspectives, well, they offer different approaches. Utilitarians, they might argue that the car should, minimize harm, even if it means sacrificing one life to save others. But then you have deontologists, they might focus on the inherent right to life, which, well, that makes the decision even more complex.
This is making my head spin a little. It seems like the more advanced our technology becomes, the more we need philosophy to help us, grapple with these complex ethical questions.
Absolutely. And it's not just about programming AI, it's about how we use technology in our own lives too. Think about social media. Algorithms, they're designed to keep us engaged, often at the expense of our well-being.
Yeah, I've definitely fallen down those social media rabbit holes, losing hours just scrolling through my feed.
Haha, it happens to the best of us. But philosophy, it can help us be more mindful of how we interact with technology. It encourages us to question the assumptions behind these platforms, to be aware of the potential for manipulation, and to use technology in a way that aligns with our values.
So philosophy can help us be more intentional, more responsible users of technology.
Exactly. And that's incredibly important in today's world. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. You mentioned the environment as another area where philosophy is relevant.
Right, climate change. It's arguably the biggest challenge facing humanity today. How can philosophy help us, tackle this crisis?
Philosophical inquiry, well, it helps us understand the ethical dimensions of climate change, for example. What obligations do we have to future generations? Do we have a moral responsibility to preserve biodiversity?
Yeah, these questions they force us to think beyond our immediate needs and consider the long-term impact of our actions.
Precisely. Environmental philosophy, it also explores our relationship with nature. Do we see ourselves as separate from nature or as part of a larger interconnected ecosystem? How do our values and actions impact the natural world?
These are deep questions that go beyond just, science and policy. They touch on our fundamental beliefs about our place in the universe.
And those beliefs, they shape our actions. If we see ourselves as separate from nature, well, we might be more likely to exploit it. If we see ourselves as interconnected with nature, we might be more inclined to protect it.
That makes sense. So philosophy can help us develop a more ethical and sustainable relationship with the planet.
Yes, and it can also help us navigate the complex political and social issues surrounding climate change. How do we balance individual freedom with the need for collective action? How do we ensure a just transition to a more sustainable future?
These are tough questions, and
Yeah.
they often lead to disagreements and polarization.
Indeed. But philosophy, it can help us engage in these debates in a more thoughtful and constructive way. It encourages us to listen to different perspectives, to identify common ground, and to search for solutions that benefit all of humanity, not just a select few.
Okay, so far we talked about how philosophy can help us navigate the challenges of technology and the environment, but you also mentioned that philosophy can help us on a personal level. Can you elaborate on that?
Of course, one of the most valuable things philosophy can teach you is how to think critically.
And we've already touched on how critical thinking is essential in the age of misinformation and information overload.
Exactly, but it goes beyond just being able to, spot fake news. Critical thinking is about questioning assumptions, evaluating evidence, and forming your own well-reasoned judgments. It's about being able to think for yourself, not simply accepting what others tell you.
So it's about becoming more independent and more discerning in our thinking.
Precisely. And that's a valuable skill in any area of life, really, whether you're making decisions about your career, your relationships, or simply how you spend your time.
It sounds like philosophy can help us live a more examined and intentional life.
Exactly. It's about being conscious of your values, your beliefs, and the choices you make. It's about striving to live a life that is meaningful and fulfilling to you.
That resonates with me for sure. But I have to admit, sometimes philosophy can feel a bit, I don't know, intimidating. Like where do I even start?
That's understandable. But one of the beautiful things about philosophy is that it's accessible to everyone. You don't need a degree or any special training to start engaging with philosophical ideas.
So how would you recommend someone kind of dip their toes into the world of philosophy?
There are so many great resources available. There are, introductory books on philosophy, podcasts, online courses, even philosophical novels and films.
I've heard there are even philosophy cafes where people gather to discuss these ideas.
Exactly. And the key is to find what resonates with you. Don't be afraid to start with something that piques your curiosity, even if it seems a little, out there.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
So what are some specific questions or topics that might spark someone's philosophical interest?
Well, think about what keeps you up at night. What are you curious about? What are the big questions that you ponder in your own life?
Like what is the meaning of life? Or do we have free will? That kind of thing.
Haha, those are classic philosophical questions, and there are no easy answers. But the process of exploring these questions, of wrestling with different ideas and perspectives, well, that's what's so enriching.
I like that. It's not about finding the right answer, but about engaging in the process of inquiry itself.
Exactly. And that process, well, it can be incredibly rewarding. It can help you develop your critical thinking skills, clarify your values, and gain a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you.
It sounds like philosophy can be a powerful tool for personal growth.
It can be. And it's a journey that anyone can embark on.
This has been a really insightful conversation. I'm starting to see how philosophy it's not just an abstract academic subject. It's a vital tool for navigating the complexities of modern life.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, philosophy, it's not about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions.
And those questions can lead us to new insights, new perspectives, and a richer understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
We've explored the practical side of philosophy, right?
Mhm.
You know, its applications in navigating tech, the environment, our personal lives, all that.
Right, the real nitty-gritty.
Well, like any field, I mean, it has its critics, people who push back a little.
Right, it would be unrealistic to think that everyone kind of embraces philosophy with open arms.
Yeah.
So let's address those criticisms head on. What are some of the common pushbacks you hear? What do people say?
One frequent criticism is that philosophy is, well, just too abstract, too detached from real world concerns, you know. People might say it's all about ivory tower academics debating esoteric theories that have no bearing on everyday life.
Yeah, I could see how someone might get that impression, especially if they've only encountered philosophy in a very theoretical academic setting.
Yeah. Exactly. But as we've discussed, there's a whole field of applied philosophy that directly engages with real world issues. I mean, philosophers are working in fields like bioethics, environmental policy, business ethics. They're grappling with the complex moral dilemmas of our time.
So it's not all just pondering the meaning of life in a dusty library.
Haha, not at all. Philosophers are tackling issues like genetic engineering, climate change, artificial intelligence. I mean, these are questions that have a direct impact on our lives and our future.
It's reassuring to know. It sounds like philosophy is more relevant than ever in our rapidly changing world.
I firmly believe that's the case, yes. Another criticism we often hear is that philosophy is too focused on Western traditions,
Mhm.
neglecting the rich diversity of thought from other cultures.
That's a valid concern. We need to make sure we're not limiting our understanding of philosophy to a single cultural perspective.
Absolutely, and thankfully there's a growing movement within philosophy to decolonize the field. This involves, well, recognizing and valuing philosophical traditions from around the world, from Asia, Africa, indigenous cultures, and beyond.
So it's about expanding the philosophical conversation to include a wider range of voices and perspectives.
Precisely. It's about understanding that philosophical inquiry is a universal human endeavor. People across cultures and throughout history, they've grappled with these fundamental questions about existence, morality, the nature of reality.
That makes the study of philosophy even more fascinating, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's like tapping into a global conversation that's been going on for centuries.
Exactly. And that conversation is, well, it's ongoing. It's constantly evolving as we face new challenges, new possibilities. Which brings us to another critique, the idea that in our increasingly technological world, well, philosophy is simply irrelevant.
Right. Some people might argue that data and algorithms have replaced the need for philosophical reflection.
That's a tempting thought, but I'd argue that the opposite is true. The rapid advancements in technology, in my view, make philosophical inquiry even more crucial.
Can you explain why you think that is?
Well, as we create increasingly powerful technologies, I mean, things like artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, advanced surveillance systems, we need philosophy to help us grapple with the ethical implications of these advancements. We need to think critically about the values that are embedded in these technologies, the potential for bias, and the risks they pose to our privacy, our autonomy, even our humanity.
So it's not a case of technology replacing philosophy. It's more like technology creating new philosophical questions that we need to address.
Exactly. We need philosophers to help us understand what it means to be human in an age of intelligent machines. We need them to help us define ethical guidelines for the development and use of these powerful technologies. We need them to help us ensure that technology, well, that it serves humanity, not the other way around.
That's a powerful argument for the continued relevance of philosophy.
Hmm?
It seems like philosophy and technology, they need to work together to to shape a future that it benefits everyone.
I couldn't agree more. And I believe that's where the future of philosophy is headed towards a more collaborative and interdisciplinary approach. We're seeing philosophers working alongside scientists, engineers, policymakers, artists, all sorts of people, all to address the complex challenges of our time.
That sounds like a really exciting development. It's like philosophy is breaking out of the confines of academia and entering the real world in new and impactful ways.
Precisely. And I think this trend will only continue to grow as we face as we face new challenges from climate change to social inequality to the rise of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
We'll need the insights of philosophy to help us navigate these uncharted waters.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the power and relevance of philosophy. It's not just about abstract theories. It's about grappling with the big questions that have always confronted humanity and finding ways to live a more meaningful and ethical life.
I'm so glad to hear that. And remember, the journey of philosophical inquiry, well, it doesn't end with this deep dive. It's a lifelong pursuit.
So what advice would you give to our listeners who are inspired to explore philosophy further? Where should they start?
Be curious, ask
Mhm.
questions, don't be afraid to challenge your own assumptions and explore different perspectives. There are countless resources available, books, articles, podcasts, online courses that can guide you on your philosophical journey.
And remember, philosophy, it's not about finding the right answers. It's about engaging in the process of inquiry itself. It's about expanding your mind, deepening your understanding of the world, and ultimately living a more thoughtful and examined life.
Beautifully said. So, to our listeners, I encourage you, keep those philosophical minds engaged. The world needs your critical thinking, your ethical reflection, and your willingness to grapple with the big questions that shape our individual and collective lives. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep seeking wisdom.
And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into philosophy. It's been a fascinating journey, and we hope you enjoyed it as much as we have.